guys, this is Jake and Nadia, and today we're going to talk to you about
The Rehearsal. We're talking to you today about the man who invented dumb Starbucks and poop-flavored yogurt, creating one of the best TV shows of all time. Tonight was the night of the finale of The Rehearsal. Thankfully, there's going to be a second season. No show has gotten me laughing so hard and then wanting to cry in such a, just whiplash. Like this show and Barry, although this is such a different show. It's basically like a documentary experiment. I think what we want this review to be is a recommendation overall for this show. I mean, I could say like it's brilliant. It's definitely something I want to rewatch very soon. I love Nathan Fielder, who created Nathan For You. And this was just like a step above, you know, taking it to the next level. I want to seriously recommend this show. Basically lay out an argument for why I think you should watch it. And then we're going to do some spoiler section.
My rating of it would be 10 out of 10.
Wow.
Because I really love the show. One of those rare shows where you don't really know. When you think you know what the show is about, you're wrong. Like when you think about episode 1, how it started, you think like, okay, it's this idea of
a guy
helping another person deal with life crisis. Then, boom, episode 2, it turns into something completely different that turns into more of an overarching story for the whole series.
Episode 2 was really a left turn, and then that's when everything just like went off the rails.
And even though like episode 2 had this overarching story, there's some sub-drama within that really takes another left turn, and it's like we're going around in circle, but it's like I like it.
The themes of this show are so complex and multi-layered. You know, we're dealing with issues of time, of family, of being a parent, of control, of manipulation, of morality, the morals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big part of it. And a lot of the debate on Twitter about this show and online is, you know, where does it go too far? And that's part of the point. You know, it's like the point is that it's trying to ride this line of what is right and wrong. I think the final episode kind of really hammers that point home about the ethics of this whole experiment.
Yes, there's very ethical questions, and also it starts I think that question comes from is this acting or is this actually real? You kind of are unable to tell that. If you've seen Nathan For You, and if you've seen the final episode of Nathan For You, Finding Francis, it's very similar to that. Yeah. And it almost seems like it's a spin-off of that particular episode.
It's like Nathan is really himself. Like there's a lot of parts in this show where it feels like Nathan's just being himself at this point, it feels like. I get like he's staging a lot of stuff, but for the most part it feels like he's trying to bring himself there, you know. And
you can tell the uncomfortability of him doing that, because I think that he is more private, but it's also like he can't help it because he becomes the experiment himself.
Yeah.
And and there are some moments when you're like, whoa, you can tell it got too real.
There are so many moments in this show where you're going, what the fuck? How is this actually happening? Mm-hmm. Where I'm literally going like multiple times throughout every episode going, can you believe what we're watching right now? Yeah. It is shocking, the human moments, the vulnerable moments that he's able to catch in people, and the profound moments. Like, it's just the stuff he gets people to say on camera, the characters, the personality, like it's just like brilliant.
Wow.
It's all the characters that we've visited throughout the season.
There's only one Nathan Fielder. That's what you understand.
There's nothing else I've ever seen that is quite like this. It's just so original and brilliant and like moving and profound, but also hilarious.
Yeah, and I do wonder, like, I would love, you know, I was researching like if there's any interviews from Nathan Fielder about this. There are none that I could find that are really substantial. I do wonder, like, what would the writing room look like? You know, a lot of these, like I said, emerges reality versus script. So
I mean, there must be a lot of improvising about where the story's going to go.
And yes, and you know that it's like probably headed a certain way, but without saying too much, there comes a moment, especially I thought the final episode, where you question, like Jake said, the morality of it all, and then you question like, okay, this couldn't have been scripted because that is going a little too far.
Yeah, and how much is Nathan acting and how much is like he goes through some serious stuff, and it's just the layers upon layers. The only thing I can compare this to, any work of art I can compare this to, is Synecdoche, New York, which is a fictional film scripted film, she needs to see it. It's really good. But it reminds me of this in the sense that that movie is about an artist who's trying to recreate New York City down to every detail. And it's just like becomes this obsessive thing that never gets finished, And it's very much like this is Nathan is doing that in real time, just like obsessing over the details in his life, where I went wrong, how to plan for everything and control everything. And I think at the final episode it's just beautifully done. Like, it's amazing that they were able to do this. And clearly they had a lot of money, because it just seems like they were throwing money around on the smallest stuff, which is part of what's so hilarious about it.
So what would you rate it?
10 out of 10.
Yeah. That's, I think, the first 10 out of 10 that you have.
With the caveat that I don't think each episode is great, but I feel like the last episode isn't the best episode. It's still great.
Oh, I think the last episode is awesome episode. Because, again, it pushes the boundaries
but
so
there are
much.
a couple episodes, 2 or 3 episodes, that I could think of like perfect in every way.
What are those?
We'll talk about that in spoilers.
Shall we move on?
I guess we'll talk about spoilers.
So I want to say, because you were talking about like saving money, I thought it was hilarious in the last episode where they had a bunch of background actors
That was brilliant.
that
Yeah.
like they had to abide by the rule of the union, and then so they just had people like not saying anything and talking like this, like that. Yeah. And they were like, and we saved $15,000.
Yeah, it's like, but we spent all this money building a complete replica of some random bar and then transporting it to Oregon.
That's why it's scripted, but like, it's fantastic.
Clearly, they're like coming up with these great ideas that are going to be hilarious. I think one of my favorite episodes is Gold Digger. That's maybe one of my favorites.
I don't agree. Yeah.
You don't like that one?
I just find it so sad for the guy who like was made to think that he had a connection and he had to wipe a stranger's ass.
It's so manipulative. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And
he gets him to wipe his ass. Like, it's the most, but he's also like an anti-Semite. Like, he's like, oh my God, like there's so many layers of like ethics and morals and like what is Nathan doing right, but where is the line drawn? And it's just so brilliant in that way. And I think that for those who are like being kind of like the arbiters of judgment or whatever, who are trying to decide, well, is Nathan is doing a bad thing? Nathan is being bad because he's doing this. Nathan is making art. Like, this is brilliant. I mean, I care, but it's like Nathan isn't murdering people in the street. He's getting willful participants who want to be on a TV show.
I don't know. Like, you think that until the last episode where, like, one of the pretend kids, one of the child actors, he doesn't have a real life dad. And he ends up thinking that, like, Nathan, even though his play daddy is his real daddy, like, he can't decipher between acting in real life. And then the child wants to call him daddy and keeps wanting to be with him. It's like, this is my daddy and all those things.
This felt like the most real episode in a way, where it's like Nathan's like kind of like, oh, we need to stop this, sort of,
because it's. But then instead what he does is he then rehearses what could have been done.
He rehearses
and then and then brings another kid who's older to the kid who's heartbroken's house to have him get observed.
So they do a rehearsal of it, but that's in the moment when he's playing the mom, when he has that epiphany, and we can go back and watch it, but he has the line where he's talking about some things are just a surprise. You can't control everything. You can't plan for everything. And it's okay. It's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like the arc of his character in this season, of like having to rehearse and plan, control all this stuff. And then like the beauty of life is the surprise, the stuff that you can't, predict. Because I guess if there's a message out of the many messages and ideas and themes in this show, it's that trying to rehearse these things doesn't fucking help. Like, it really, you cannot simulate being a parent. You can't do these, there are things that like are fundamentally you cannot recreate and make artificial. I think in our world where we're trying to make everything artificial, to make everything some kind of experience in that way, that can be virtual reality, whatever, we're trying to get secondhand. There's so much in life that is just unnamably perfect that you cannot recreate. It's just the beauty of life. You cannot recreate those things.
No, and I do think that's the overarching message that is definitely felt when he asks the heartbroken kid's mom. The heartbroken kid mom is like, he's going to be okay. And Nathan's like, how do you know? It's like, because you just know. When you have a kid, you just know. I think that's the message, is that the rehearsal ultimately becomes pointless because you can run through different scenarios, but then there's some improvisation in life and you can't really prep for, you just have to kind of go with it. I do want to talk about Angela.
I was literally just going to say, can we talk about Angela?
Yeah.
She's basically like the second main character in a way.
She is. She's supposed to be a main character, and then she she ends up not being a main character when Nathan inserts himself.
Yep. And she like drifts into the background, and you can tell she's basically just like using up HBO's money to just like hang out in Oregon,
I don't blame her, but I think the biggest thing is I can't really stand Angela very much.
No.
I love watching her, and I think it's so funny because
the way she bounces off Nathan she's a perfect foil to him.
And I think that they couldn't have casted anyone better. She doesn't have sense of humor, and she's very out there.
She's very self-righteous.
So
some of the best, funniest moments in the show is just someone saying something, cut to Nathan Fielder, just staring and just going, okay.
Yeah.
Or just his reaction. His face is that like Buster Keaton, just like stoic, like can read anything, and just like seeing his subtle reactions to everything is just brilliant. And it's so funny.
Well, he also has a really great comeback. This is not for the rehearsal, but I remember Nathan, for you, there's this one episode where he's like trying to give this private detective a Yelp review. He tells the private detective, like, you don't have any Yelp review, and people care about Yelp review, and the private detective goes off. It's like, what? Who cares about Yelp review? Have you searched Google? Have you searched this? Nathan just goes, are you done with your tantrum? So I love moments like that. There's definitely ones that occur in the rehearsal.
It's funny that people are talking more about the rehearsal, about the ethics of it and whatever, because in my mind, Nathan For You was a far meaner show in a way, because it was, I'm not saying it was like mean-spirited or it's like a bad show. Like, it's one of my favorite shows of all time, but the joke often is like, look at this person, look at they're being really stupid on camera, and like, can you believe they agreed to this, that sort of stuff. Whereas this show is a lot more somber and inward looking, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like, look how sad this is, and like, look at Nathan, and it's kind of like,
he portrays himself really as a lonely person.
He puts himself in a lot of really uncomfortable situations and really shows himself as like very sad, very lonely, and you kind of don't really know where the line between reality and fiction is. And I think, that's the point.
With fake Angela, there's a scene with fake Angela, what you're saying.
The great scene.
Great scene. They're trying to rehearse how Nathan is going to confront the real Angela, who she doesn't want her kids to grow up with two religions in the household. So Nathan is Jewish and Angela is Christian, and then Nathan's like, can we compromise? Can we have them raised with Christian values and Jewish values? And it's like, no. Fake Angela ends up like getting up in the dinner and goes, do you want to feel something? And
you'll never feel anything.
And then he goes, yeah. And you feel like they're gonna kiss. And then fake Angela goes, well, you never will. And then Nathan just like pauses and goes, maybe let's try that a little nicer.
That was such a good moment. Like, you see him tearing up and like getting emotional or like straight up crying, and it's so jarring because he's always so stoic, and it's like, how much is he in this,
Well, you know what? I really was like, oh crap, he's really in this, was when he had his parents.
I think a different moment when he was really in it was when they did the fake overdose for the teenager, and I was like, oh my God.
I actually think it started with the parents, though, because and his mom goes, so you don't want to talk to Angela because it's much easier to stay silent than deal with confrontation. And then she's almost said something insinuating like, or actually stating like, this is very similar pattern in his previous relationship. And I thought that was like, ooh, this is getting really meta because
it's all meta. It's all the whole show is like
that. But that's when I was like, whoa, this is like, because you can really like draw like, oh, there's no way this is real. There's no way he's gonna insert his real life. But then he inserts his own insecurities, his own failures.
How do you know it's his real parents though?
Because I saw them on Nathan For You, I'm pretty sure.
What stands out? What should people watch more? If you were recommending Nathan Fielder, would you recommend Nathan For You, or would you recommend The Rehearsal?
I would recommend both.
Both, obviously, but to be perfectly honest, I think it helps to start with Nathan For You because it's kind of, even though Nathan For You is a very weird show, it is an easier entrance because it's very like has a familiar format. It's like you get the premise, like he's helping business owners.
It's very easy to get into Nathan For You, but also if you ever watch the series finale, the final episode,
like a bridge,
I really feel like it's a bridge between that show and this show. So you're going to get a lot more understanding.
Yeah. I could probably talk about this forever. And honestly, talking about it now makes me think like, oh, maybe I want to do like a long video of just dissecting it. Like that could just be fun because
you should.
So many layers. It's so interesting. It's so deep.
Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and we hope you have a lovely
weekend.
Yeah.
And this will be out tomorrow morning, so enjoy your Saturday.
Yeah. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.